welcome to another episode of the Gridiron Fantasy Football Podcast. Today is Thursday, September 9th, 2020. And of course, I am Chip, I'm your host, and thank you so much for listening today. Now, if you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining us as well. Please share our podcast. You can find us over on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. If you'd like to watch us, you can watch over on YouTube at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So please don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And guys, we made it. Today is the first game of the NFL season, and I cannot be more stoked. I mean, we've waited so long for this to happen. We weren't sure if it was going to happen, but now it's here. It's week one. We got the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Houston Texans, and I cannot be more ecstatic about it. I mean, I've been in Orlando for the last week. I was on vacation. I had my own fantasy football draft, and I just got back on Tuesday night. And just like you guys, my draft was pretty crazy. I got players that I really wanted. I had guys that I knew that I want to walk out of the draft with, and my roster structure was nothing like I had thought. We play in a 10-team PPR, 2-quarterback format league, and it's an auction league. So no players off the table. As long as you want to pay for the player, you're able to get that player. And I have two guys that I always want to get in my draft, and it's Patrick Mahomes and Alvin Kamara. And now, because of that, these two guys are premium players that cost a premium. And unfortunately, I couldn't get both those guys. But I do like my roster. I do like the fact that I came out. I accidentally went running back heavy. It wasn't the plan, but I got some deals. And, I was able to get Alvin Kamara. I got Dalvin Cook. I got Miles Sanders. I got Tyreek Hill. So I got a good core of players. And then a lot of my other roster spots are a lot of upside guys. So my quarterback position is kind of nerve-wracking because I drafted Big Ben and then I drafted Joe Burrow. So those guys can be a boom or bust for me. If they hit and these guys have great seasons, my team's going to be great. And for my wide receiver, so we changed our format this year. So we went from a 2-quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver. We play a flex, a tight end, and a defense, and no kicker. And we decided to vote on adding a 3rd wide receiver spot. So then now we can technically play 4 wide receivers in our league. So when we play in an auction league, we have no idea how that's going to play out. We have no idea how the values are going to dictate that. So the thing about what I love about our league is that we are able to determine our own values for players. It's hard to even mock draft in our league because every year the values change. And I like most of us in our league, we have a spreadsheet on all the values on the players for the last, for me, for at least 4 or 5 years. And it kind of gives you a good average on how players going to come out. And, it was a bizarre year. The top wide receivers didn't go as much. And then the middle tier quarterbacks went for single digits when it comes to their cost, which I know single digits seems like a lot of money in some leagues, but in our league it's not. We pay premium costs for our top quarterbacks. So, for example, the guy that got Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, I think paid up towards just over $100, probably $120 for them. So $70 a piece on average, if I remember the numbers correctly. And that seems like a lot, but that's premium in our league. We determine our own values. And it's crazy because it really makes you have to really know certain players. Hopefully you get deals, and hopefully you bid on players that people don't want, so you get these steals in the draft. But it is a crazy draft that we had, and it was pretty good. Like most of us always, every year the 10 of us always get together in person, but because of COVID and everything going on, we had to do our draft through Zoom. So it was a different dynamic, but it all worked out and it was great. But to kind of go back to my roster, like I said, I have a good core amount of players. So like I said, I got Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Tyreek Hill, and then I have Miles Sanders. I have him as my flex player technically. And then I grabbed A.J. Brown, which I love A.J. Brown. I had him last year. I have him in a dynasty league, and I love his upside. But we're not sure how the Titans' offense is going to be. We hope they're good again. We hope that they're efficient again. But I just hope that A.J. Brown has a solid sophomore season. And I have Preston Williams in all my leagues. I know I was kind of off on him early on just because of the injury. But then as I listened to more reports on him in the training camp, I decided to buy in on him. So I definitely like Preston Williams. I have him in all my leagues. And then I grabbed Brian Edwards from Las Vegas. I think he's a good bench spot. I have Alan Lazard. These are just stash players. These are players I got for $1 in my league, and these guys could have tremendous upside if they click. So I think that's key is when you play and you have a draft like I do, when you go stars and duds, when you try to grab all the elite players you can, and then you have to kind of fill your roster up with dollar players or players that you hope that you have a hunch on. It plays out in your favor, obviously. So, and then my tight end, I got Hayden Hurst. I like Hayden Hurst. I wanted Gronk, but Gronk went for way much more than I expected in our league, and it just wasn't worth it to me. So, overall, I had a very good trip in Orlando. It was great to see friends. It was great to see my family, and now I'm back to doing the podcast. And I'm glad you guys were patient, but sometimes you just need a break from everything and take on some time for yourself. So it was great. I mean, I was able to highlight my whole vacation on Tuesday when I was able to drive a 2009 Acura NSX. If some of you don't know what that car is, it's the Acura's high performance sports car. The retail value on these cars are about 180 to 200 grand. And my dad hooked me up and he was able to get the car for me to test drive, and by far it's my dream car. I want this car so bad, and it's such a powerful car. I was able to get to 120 miles per hour on the highway, and it is an adrenaline rush. I loved it. It was great. So I'm actually going to do a YouTube video on that. I'm going to post it on my personal channel, but I'll let you guys know when that video's up. But great experience. So definitely a good draft, and I hope everyone had a great draft over the weekend as well. And I hope you guys are ready for the week one matchups, because we're all in now. It's football, and it's going to be great. Now, if you guys were listening to my podcast, you guys knew that I was doing an Adam Thielen Jersey giveaway. And I have selected the person who has won the Adam Thielen signed jersey. And congratulations to Jill from East Rockaway, New York. You are the winner of the signed Adam Thielen jersey. So I will have that mailed out to you hopefully by this weekend or next week. So thank you so much for supporting the show. Thank you so much for just listening and being part of the show. It means a lot that there's people out there that are supporting me and becoming a small channel. Hopefully it starts to grow. But Jill, thank you so much for the support. Like I said, I'll have that out to you next week. Now moving forward, we're gonna go into the news. There's a lot of news that went on for the last week or so, and so I want to get into that. So obviously the biggest news was Deshaun Watson re-signed signed an extension with the Houston Texans. It's a 4-year, $160 million contract. So obviously his average salary is gonna be $40 million per year, and I think this deal had to get done. It's one of those things where Patrick Mahomes set the bar on the $50 million a year contract, and honestly, Deshaun Watson, that's a great price for a elite starting quarterback in the NFL. So I hope that this gives them some opportunity to be able to put some more pieces around him. But Deshaun Watson, I mean, it was inevitable that was going to happen. He wants to be in Houston. They re-signed him, and then obviously it only being a 4-year deal means he can sign another deal after that could be even a bigger contract. So great job with the two sides coming to an agreement, but it was definitely needed. And so now the next question is, what's Dak Prescott going to sign for after the season or during the season once that takes place, once they see kind of the numbers and everything. And I think Patrick Mahomes and then Deshaun Watson were the two top names that I think needed to drop with their contract to kind of see where that put Dak Prescott. So I think Dak Prescott gets something similar to that, but it's good that actually Deshaun Watson got signed right before the season. And then also DeAndre Hopkins signed a 2-year, $54.5 million extension with the Cardinals. Obviously this was inevitable as well, because when you trade somebody with kind of the contract in limbo, you want to make sure as you're receiving that player. So when the Cardinals are receiving DeAndre Hopkins, you want to make sure that this guy wants to stay with the team. Obviously, money talks. He re-signed, and I think that's going to be a great combo with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. I think that's a great fantasy options when it comes to just the relevance of those two, and it's just going to continue to build around them and hopefully cause that offense to be a prolific offense. But a great signing, to sign DeAndre Hopkins to an extension. And also, Kareem Hunt signed a 2-year extension with the Cleveland Browns for a $13.25 million contract. Now, this is good for Kareem Hunt. He kind of went to he was on the Chiefs, had a great rookie season, having a great, sophomore season, and then all the stuff happened where he got suspended and, he was going through all that stuff, and then he got, to the Cleveland Browns, and he did his time suspended, played his suspension out last year, and then he had a decent season after that. I mean, he was a week in and week out flex play for the Cleveland Browns. They fit what they do on offense, and Kareem Hunt is being drafted everywhere. I mean, why would you not grab Kareem Hunt? I mean, he's a good flex play, and obviously is one of the main handcuffs you want for somebody like Nick Chubb. If he goes down, Kareem Hunt is an RB1, I think, week in and week out. The dude, we know he can do it. So the fact that he re-signed with the Cleveland Browns, that's a good sign in the sense of like him having some stability. And then, like I said, it's crucial that if Chubb goes down, that Kareem Hunt's going to be that starter going forward. And also, Adam Schefter's reporting that the Saints are close to signing an extension with Alvin Kamara. This has been a kind of a weird story, going back from last week where there was this chance of a holdout. Then there was this chance that he got this epidural injection that he was saying that he was in the practice facility, and then other people were saying that he was holding out. But apparently there was all this rumors going around that we were unsure of, and that now that they're coming closer to an agreement. Now he's back at practice, and there's no chance of him holding out. Based on the words from him, I want to believe the players when they say and they come out and quote and say they're not going to hold out. You have to believe that. So it's good that they're coming close to a deal. He deserves to get paid. He's been very productive, and he's been a very great running back since coming into the league. So I'm a Kamara truther. So I cannot wait for him to get this behind him and just focus on football. So it's definitely exciting to see him get hopefully a multi-year deal. Now, going to some of the injury news. Now, Kenyon Drake was, obviously, we've been, following this throughout the last few weeks of training camp, that he was in a walking boot. He wasn't really practicing, but he wasn't listed on the injury report this week. So anybody who's worried about Kenyon Drake and his availability, looks like he's going to be full go coming, Sunday. So, put him in your lineup. Don't worry about him. But that's great news. Now, same thing with Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce was not practicing, but he wasn't on the injury report for tomorrow night. For tonight. He is going to play, and start him, fire him up. Last time the Texans played the Chiefs, Travis Kelce shredded them to pieces. So, put him with confidence, and you have no problem with Travis Kelce tomorrow. And now on Wednesday, we had an issue with Mike Evans getting injured. So there were some issues with figuring out. We knew that he got injured. We weren't sure exactly what it was. They weren't disclosing the information to us, or to the media. Then all of a sudden, it came out that he's dealing with a soft tissue injury, which was becoming a hamstring injury. This is concerning. I've always told you throughout the weeks, and just through my own analysis on injuries and hamstring injuries, is that these things linger, and it's concerning for him because he's dealt with hamstring injuries his whole entire career. If anything gets injured on Mike Evans, it's his hamstring, and he missed games last year. It looks like they're going to try to get him to play on Sunday against the Saints, but make sure you have a secondary option. If you can't have Mike Evans go, then make sure you have somebody that you can replace him with. Now, that doesn't mean you have to replace him with somebody on the Bucs. Hopefully you have some depth. But if you're just strapped for somebody, there's Scotty Miller on the Bucs roster that Tom Brady seems to be meshing with, and there's Justin Watson, there's another receiver. Not saying that these guys are must-haves or guys that you have to start, but if you're in a pinch and you need somebody to start, look at one of those guys. I personally probably go with Scotty Miller a little bit more than Justin Watson, but that's just worst case scenario, situation. So it looks like they're going to try to get Mike Evans to play, but just pay attention to the injury report to see what happens with Mike Evans. And the same thing with Kenny Golladay. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. He was limited to practice on Wednesday, so you want to make sure that you pay attention to the injury reports, see what these players are doing in their practices, and see if they're limited or full participation, because all that's going to matter when it comes Sunday. Now, this is good news. Jalen Reagor from the Philadelphia Eagles, he returned to practice on Wednesday. This guy is probably sitting on your free agency right now. He's a guy that I know in a lot of my leagues, like non-dynasty leagues, was not drafted. I know he's right now in my league. He's sitting there on free agency. And we know that during the offseason and during the training camp that they want Jalen Reagor to be their starter. So the fact that he went down and he was down with his shoulder, it got to the point where we're like, okay, who's going to be the person that Carson Wentz is going to throw to? I mean, I know they're trying to take Alshon Jeffrey off the PUP and everything. They still got Ertz. They still got Goddard. They have Deshaun Jackson, but they were trying to mold Jalen Reagor as that go-to number one receiver. And there's still a possibility. We just don't know how good the shoulder is. We have no idea if one hit's going to cause him to be out for more weeks. But the fact of the matter is, if he's there, I would take a flyer, put him on your bench, stash him. Don't start him. You want to see how he does in the first week, but at least have him on your roster just in case something does happen, he blows up, and then now you don't have to fight with the fab or anything like that. So, and staying with the Eagles, Miles Sanders, he returned to practice on Wednesday as well. There was some talk that they're going to try to limit his snap count on Sunday. I don't foresee that happening. I think that this is the same situation he dealt with last year, and then he started the season fine, and now he did have a timeshare with Jordan Howard, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to practice, that he's going to be limited in the games. I hope he's full go for my sake, but it's one of those things where I just want to monitor that as well. Just always look at the practice reports and see if they're what participation level they're at, and then go from there. And then in Las Vegas, Bryan Edwards and Henry Ruggs have been listed as the starters for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, we kind of knew Henry Ruggs was going to be that starting slot receiver. Now, Bryan Edwards, a guy that keeps on floating around because Tyrell Williams is out for the season because of a shoulder injury. Bryan Edwards is a guy that could be that breakout this year that we don't know about, in the sense of we haven't seen him, right? We hear all the talks in training camp about how good Edwards is doing, but we have not physically seen him on the football field yet with the Raiders. So there's going to be a lot of surprises that happen in week one, but get in front of it. Try to pick up Bryan Edwards if he's available, just in case, because the Las Vegas Raiders like him, and if it's worth noting that, because if he breaks out, you don't have to fight for him in free agency. So I would, for your sake, try to go for him right now. So that's it about all the news. I mean, that's a lot of news to cover, but that's everything going on right now in the NFL. And like I said, every podcast I will continue to bring the reports and all the news to you. But for right now, we're going to preview the week one matchup of the Houston Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, so now it's time to preview the week one matchup, the first game back of the NFL season. Football is finally back, and it is the Super Bowl champs versus the Houston Texans, and it's the ultimate grudge match from last season. I mean, what a savage move is to have the Chiefs host the Houston Texans at home to a team that was blowing them out in the beginning of the game last year in the playoffs, to being kind of like that joke where I saw memes everywhere about the Texans just having this huge lead, and then the Chiefs just come back and just score so many unanswered points to beat them. I mean, and they put the scores and the deficits in the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl rings. I mean, that's a savage move right there. Definitely a flex move, and I am excited. I mean, right now, it's here. We're able to. It's obtainable. The watching of the NFL and fantasy starts tomorrow night, and it's super exciting. I mean, right now, looking at the line, obviously the Chiefs are favored by 9 points. The over/under is 53.5 points, and it's hard to not root for the Chiefs. I mean, I'm a huge Patrick Mahomes fan, and I'm a huge Chiefs fan in a sense of just they're fun to watch. Obviously I'm a Bucs fan at heart, but watching the Chiefs they're always fun. And I look at the line, I look at the over under, and I think that I think they have a chance to. I may take the over on this because I really think this is going to be show. I could see it being a 31-24 matchup. I think that there's going to be a lot of question marks though. I mean, these players have not played in real life games against opponents since last season. Generally you at least get your feet wet during training camp. And the fact of the matter is that they weren't hitting other people. They're hitting their own teammates. And it's different when you're playing against opponents that don't know your offense. You don't know how they're playing defense. And to really see how that's going to shape out, next or tomorrow night or tonight, it's going to be just a very fascinating thing to see. So, for me, when it comes to fantasy perspectives, like, we got the Kansas City Chiefs, and obviously the must starts for the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be Mahomes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. And those are like given starters. And I know some people are like, well, what about Clyde Edwards-Helaire? In your draft, if you drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you drafted him as your RB1. He went in the first round. There's no way he went in the second round. And if you're using that much stock on a running back, you have to play him. You have to go in knowing, okay, he's my high risk, high reward guy, because we don't know what he's going to be like coming out of the gate. Now, is he going to have a cream Hunt like start? I got Kareem Hunt when he was a rookie. I played him. I chanced it and played him his first game of the year in his career, and he scored me 45 fantasy points. He blew up, and I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire has the opportunity to do that. So he's a guy you definitely have to start. And you don't know what you're going to get out of him, right? We don't know. Like, that's the thing. Like, we haven't seen this guy play. He could get limited snaps for all we know. But when you take a guy that high in the draft, you have to play him, and then you have to suffer the consequences if he has a bust game. But just know that better games will be coming forward if that happens tomorrow night. I can't see that happening. That offense is too prolific. That sets it. His skill set is for that offense. So just be at that point where you're okay. Whatever happens with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, just be happy with it, because better times will be coming with him. Now, I generally do all my matchups based on the must starts, the flex options, and the boom bust type of players. Honestly, for the Chiefs, the must starts, like I said, are Mahomes, Edwards-Helaire, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill. Those are the must starts. The flex options, I really don't have like a good flex to put in this game, because there's not really that guy that I can feel like, okay, I can plug him in and get a couple points here and there. But for me, I have two boom and bust players on the Chiefs that if you're in a deep league, or you're in like a 16-team league and you have deep bench spots and a deep roster, then Sammy Watkins is going to be a good option, and Mecole Hardman's another option, because these are two guys that all it takes is one long play, and this guy can score a bunch of points, right? So, like, if you're in a PPR league and you get a 50-yard touchdown, you get the point for reception, you get the 5 points for the yardage, and you get the 6 points for the touchdown. So that's what I'm saying about boom bust players. These are two guys who could just have one catch for 50 yards and a touchdown and give you a good enough amount of points, in your flex position. So, those are the guys that I think are going to be ones that are going to stand out, tomorrow night for the Chiefs. Now, when it comes to the Texans, it's a little different. For the Texans, the must starts are Deshaun Watson, obviously, and for me, it's David Johnson. David Johnson, you drafted at least as an RB2, or at the very, or a flex. David Johnson is the guy you have to play. You don't draft David Johnson and question if you're going to start him or not. So that's why I have David Johnson as a must start, because why did you draft him? He's a guy that it could be that high risk, high reward player, that boom bust player where, he hasn't had good fantasy seasons in the last couple of seasons, but he goes to a different team. He goes to a team where his skill set is probably going to be utilized because they need more wide receivers. I can see a chance where David Johnson has a bunch of receptions. So, David Johnson for me is a must start. When it comes to a flex option, Will Fuller is this for me in this game, only because we don't know what Will Fuller is like without DeAndre Hopkins. So when Will Fuller is gaining majority of the coverage, how is he going to perform with that? So Will Fuller, to me, I think obviously he's a wide receiver 2 this week, but he's a guy that we're just unsure of, because does he hold up? Is he able to be okay with the double coverage, be able to make catches and make plays with being in double coverage or whatnot? So it'll be interesting to kind of see how Will Fuller transitions as that number one wide receiver role. And for me, the boom bust for the Texans is Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is a former first round pick, great skill set, but unfortunately he just can't stay healthy. He deals with a lot of concussions, and we have no idea what he's going to be like with the Texans. I mean, it's one of those things where, if you like I said before, if you're in a pinch, you need somebody to throw into your flex, put Brandon Cooks there. I mean, if you have him, I'm not saying if you don't have him, go pick him up for it and put him in your roster. I'm just saying if you are the person who drafted Brandon Cooks, then, if you have someone who just got injured or anything like that, it may be somebody you just gonna have to plug in and hope for the best because, honestly, when it comes to fantasy football, I'm gonna preach this a lot in the first couple of weeks, is that we don't know how anything's gonna play out in the first week, right, of football. So to do starts and sits and sleepers of the week and all that, it's really hard to do because we don't know, right? We just go based on right now on reports that came out of training camp because we haven't watched any preseason games or anything like that will help us lean towards playing a player or not. So for me, it's one of those things where you just have to be okay, and this is where you feel like how your draft went. So if you pretty much are going to draft the players that you drafted, you're putting your best players in the lineup and see what happens because you'll change things as the season goes. You'll know what players right off the bat are going to be worth keeping. Players are going to have to just put back on free agency and release those players, or obviously the players that are on free agency that you get to pick up that could help your season. I mean, right now I know in a couple of my leagues I picked up James Robinson of the Jags because obviously Armstead is injured. Fournette went to got released and went to the Bucs. So a lot of reports are talking about how Robinson was going to be the starting running back, for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I know it's not a big name, but he's a guy that if he's the starter and gets the workload, he possibly could be a good productive player for you that could be a flex player, or he could be this guy who blows up and is the next star this year. Who knows? But it's worth noting that you have to just play your best lineup you can, and then as news comes around where you can pick up somebody here and there, that's how you put the puzzle the puzzle together, and the pieces together to try to figure out how to optimize your roster. So for that game for tomorrow night, be excited that football season is back. If you have any of these guys that I mentioned, then that's awesome. But I think that it's just going to be just a cool atmosphere tomorrow night, even though if the fans are going to be limited and some of the things. But football is back, and I'm interested to see how the NFL does with all this because we've seen how the NBA did things. They had their virtual fans. The camera angles are a little bit better because the fans were not in the stands. And then you look at what baseball did. They did the cardboard cutouts. Obviously the NFL can't really do that type of stuff because the seats are so far away from the field. You're not going to be able to see anybody virtually or any cutouts at all anyway. So it'll be interesting to see, what the NFL does with not having fans in the stadium or having limited fans. So a lot of talking points for this week, but look, I'm just excited for tomorrow night. So with that being said, I just want to announce my new podcast schedule. Now that the season has started, I'm going to be going to 3 podcasts per week. So every Monday I'll be doing a podcast on the weekly recap of all the games, all the fantasy players that were standouts, players that disappointed us for that week. Tuesday obviously is going to be the waiver wire show when I tell you who my top waiver wire pickups are going to be, and then Thursday is going to be the weekly previews of all the matchups. I'm going to do every game. I'm going to go through all the players that I think are fantasy relevant, who to start, who not to start, and whatnot. So I think that's going to be good. And obviously on Saturday, I'm going to do a weekly injury report. Now, this is not going to be available on the podcast portion of everything, but it's going to be on YouTube only. So you guys know me. I practice physical therapy. A lot of the things I like doing about is injury reports and talking about the injuries, on how long a player could be out, if somebody you have to be worried about or whatnot. But that weekly report will be on Saturdays on YouTube only. So thank you so much for listening today. Please like, share, comment with this episode. So like I said, next episode I'll be talking about the week 1 matchups. So don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. You can find us over on Facebook and Twitter at the Gridiron Pod. You can find us on Instagram at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. Take care.